This conference will now be recorded.
All right. So just the usual, you must attend the entire webinar or community of practice to obtain the CEUs. If more than one person is on the screen or telephone call, each person wanting credit must be identified. Credit requests must be submitted within 30 days of the presentation. Uh, you must identify yourself at the beginning of the presentation on screen or in the chat. And an email must be sent to Irene at Bakersfield ARC, which identifies in writing 3 concepts that you learned from today's presentation. Um, okay. These are the 10 HCBS rules, just real briefly. Access to the community, choice of settings, right to privacy, right to independence, choosing services and supports. For those that are in a residential facility, an admissions agreement, uh, privacy in the home. Again, number 6, 7, 8, 9 are specifically for residential. Privacy in the home for 7, being able to have your own schedule and have access to food basically anytime. And then a right to visitors. And finally, that the facility needs to be accessible so that individuals can fully use their home. Um, okay, so I was at a conference this last week up in Sacramento, the Supported Life Conference. And one of the presenters was a company called ALO, A-L-O, Consulting. And if you go to their website, again, ALO Consulting, they have a lot of good material. And they have some material that you can actually purchase too. So if you want to get that, they're doing something similar to what we're doing here at Current Regional Center. However, they're doing it for like I think 2 or 3 regional centers in the Bay Area, a couple in the Los Angeles area. So they're doing a multiplicity of regional centers. Um, what I will do is they gave out some materials in their webinar. So if they gave them out in their webinar, I assume that they're available for others as well. I don't see anything on here that says can't be shared. So I will make these available to you. One is HCBS and My Rights, and the other one is uh, Advocate for Your Home and Community-Based Services, HCBS Rights. Okay, so I'm going to utilize the one today, and if you can see that, this will show up on the screen really quickly here. And like I say, we'll make copies of that available through Irene if you would like to get that, Ruth. And they I want to read statements, and I'm going to try to do things a little differently because one of the issues that people have shared with me is that these particular hour sessions are community of practice. Now, community of practice is where people share with each other what what their interests are, what their concerns are, things that they've tried that work for them or what didn't work for them, and maybe when the evaluator came out, what they shared. Things that we can all use to make our implementation of HCBS that much better. So, as a community, we talk about how we're practicing HCBS with the idea of, you know, building better. Yeah. Um, so what I'm going to do is this, we're going to almost have like a game show today. You know, where I'm going to ask you guys to open up your mics, and then I'm going to do is I'm going to read a statement, and this is from the client's perspective. And then I want you to try to tell me, Valerie and Ruth, um, which of the 10 rules you think this would fall under. And it could fall under more than one. So it could be, for example, something could be have access to the community and choosing services and supports. So it might be both 1 and 5, or it could be related to privacy, both 3 and 7. So anyways, with that, here's the first one here. I have the right to choose my community and have support in being with that community. What would people think that would fall under? I have a right to choose my community and have support in being with that community. Which numbers do you think that would include?
Probably like 1
Uh huh.
and 5.
Okay. How about you, Valerie? What do you think? What do you think?
I was thinking also 1 for
Uh
sure.
huh.
Um, and 4. 5
Okay.
also sounds good, but I was thinking
Yep.
those.
And the interesting thing about this is there is no right really answer. What my friends at Allo did was they tried to amalgamate. Is that right? The rights into statements, and in many cases they combined 2 or 3 or 4 of the rights. But so I think this is a really good tool to get you thinking about how it's not just, oh, access to community. That's a discrete rule. No, that rule also combines with some of the other rules in terms of what the final rules are all about. Because what this is the federal government um, clearly said, okay, now that we've really chosen to make community where services and supports are. So since the early 80s, when the focus shifted from institutional care and the bulk of the money went to state developmental centers, and the community got less, to over the years where the vast majority of the funds that the federal government gives are to community services. So what happened was in 2014, when the feds finally said, okay, now it's time to say, okay, what is community? What is institution? What sort of services were? So we had been moving in the direction of a community model, but there really wasn't a good definition as to what that should be. So with these 10 rules, they sort of defined what they want community to be all about. But some of these rules overlap with each other. So when we make a statement like we just did, and you'll find that they cover more than one. Okay, so here's the next one. I have the right to decide how my money is spent, whether I am the one spending it or not. Which one do you think? I have the right to decide on how my money is spent, um, and whether I'm the one who spends it or not.
I would think 4
Uh huh.
Yeah, the same
and then
4.
1.
Yeah, also 1 I remember mentioning in
Uh huh.
regarding.
Yeah,
accessibility.
good choices. So access to community, I can go out in the community and spend my money, uh, uh, and then right to independence. My can independently decide how I want to do things. So I think those are good choices for that. Um, I have the right to live a life just like someone who does not receive disability services. Okay, takers on that one. I have the right to a life just like someone who does not receive disability services.
Well, I think generally that's all 10, right? Basically stating that they're trying to live a life just like everyone else and someone who's not receiving services. But I know specifically in stating, it does say that in the federal requirement number one for sure.
Yeah, well, yeah. Number one specifically says that
Yeah.
in it that uh,
So
that the services
also,
should be. Go ahead.
I just wanted to let you know, just let me know when that $1 million question comes up, Jeff. Yeah, I'll let you know where to write the check out to.
No, unfortunately, we work in social services, and that's not going to happen. Wish it could be, but and especially in this year. Yesterday, in a vendor advisory committee meeting, Enrique Roman, who is the head of community services and the acting director until the regional center decides on a new director, was saying that at a recent meeting of the directors, uh, the interim director of DDS said that for this year, the budget is basically status quo. And they are hopeful at this point that next year's will be similar, which in a time when the state is facing deficits and they're not sure about how much revenue will be coming in. Each month they get a projection based off of the income from taxes that come in every month, and they sort of project out from that. So they said they should have a better idea come within the next couple of weeks. In addition to that, the governor, um, by statute, by the state law, has to present to the legislature uh, the state of the state. So every January, the governor gives his initial proposed budget for the next year. So that should give us a much better outline of where the system is going to go over at least the 25, 26 year. And one of the things that they do when they're projecting uh, budgets is they're actually projecting 2 to 3 years out. So not only are they going to be looking at what's going to be happening in the 25, 26 years, so from July of 25 through June of 26, but then also what's going to happen from July of 26 through June of 27. So the projections are not only for the next fiscal year, but for subsequent fiscal years as well. And where that really oftentimes comes into play is if you're looking at um, increasing, uh, like so for example, if they're looking at a rate increase, well, that has implications. So if you increase it, this year, then you got to, it then goes on to the next year. And if you have more providers or more clients, that sort of multiplies it. And so not only do you need to look at what the costs are for something that you're doing now, but how those costs will be in the future. So getting back to your request about the $1 million question, uh, don't think it's going to happen in California anytime soon. Yeah. Um, how about this? I have the right to live alone in a private unit if I want.
Well, that's definitely number two,
Uh huh.
and number three,
Yeah.
and number seven.
Uh huh. Uh, those are those are good. I might add four, a right to be independent, and also choose my services and supports, because if I'm going to be
Yeah.
sitting getting independent, SLS, for example, or other services, or maybe I wanted to go into the self determination program. So those all fall into those. Um, I have the right to be free from being moved or touched by anyone. No one can force me to do anything I don't want to do.
That's definitely three.
Uh huh. Yep. Um, that would be
And
a good
seven.
answer. Uh huh. So that that has to do with autonomy. I mean, your right to, as an individual, to make decisions about who you are, your own self, and who is involved in assisting you. Could be, choosing services or supports could possibly come into that as well. Um, Again, there's not a right or wrong answer. It sort of fits into the whole picture of what we're doing. Um, I have a right to choose my own services.
Well, definitely, two and four and five is the primary.
Yeah. Yep. Um, most definitely. You know, come this coming January, there will be the full implementation of the new IPP, which is much more person centered, and the document is more of a narrative type document. Ruth, have you seen that document?
Yeah, I think I had you send it to me.
Okay, yeah, it's that's what they're going to be using with all of the individuals, and there are drop down menus. You can go to different sections and complete different sections, and it really does do more for the whole concept of services and supports. One of the challenges that I see with our current system is that, and I don't know what it's like at CVRC, but at Kern, there's been a fairly high turnover of service coordination, and they've also had some changes in first line program managers. What that means is you've got new people coming in. So when you talk about choices of services and supports, if the coordinator doesn't fully know or understand what is out there. Yeah, Valerie just put up the address for the IPP document again. Um, if someone doesn't fully understand what is available, you know, the individual themselves, their family, the provider who working with that individual may not know either what's out there. So, in order to make choices about services and supports, it's helpful to have as much information about what would be available for that individual as possible. Now, um, the future of that is changing a little bit. The department is putting out the statewide directory, which is going to have information about all service providers. So in theory, someone can go in there and look and see what are the different services under the different service categories in a given geographic area, and then hopefully can make better choices. Makes an assumption that people know that yes, directory is there, how to use it, what the different categories mean in terms of services, but it is a step forward. And I think if it's with some education and some work with folks, that could be that is and has the potential to be an excellent tool in helping people to make those choices about their life and what they want to do. So, when we're talking about choice, it really does enhance people's ability. Historically, in many cases, once someone has gotten into a type of a program, either day program, vocational type programming, or into a residential setting, as long as that setting continues to be there, that person stays there. I mean, so people oftentimes have been in a residential facility 8, 10, 12 years, which, if that's their choice, great. But do they really fully understand that they have choices and that there are other facilities or other types of living arrangements, et cetera? What the average American moves every 4 years or something. And that's not necessarily the case with the people that we work with. So we want to make sure that they understand that they can choose their services and supports. I have a right to own or rent my home under a legal enforceable agreement like a lease.
Well, clearly number 6,
Uh-huh.
and number 1,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
number 4.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the federal government uh, was really looking at some states where individuals basically had very, very limited ability to, so the provider said, hey, listen, adios. And, they were, that person was gone, or, there were throughout the country, there were a number of abuses in residential settings. So the federal government put uh, the whole issue of admissions agreements slash leases into the federal rules. In California, with requirements under Title 22, we have had the need for an admissions agreement for many years. And interesting enough, when I first started back in the late 70s, that agreement was like 3/4 of a page. It was pretty simple. Over the years, it sort of expanded. Licensing still has a fairly well, it's not as extensive as the one that regional centers use. And regional centers, a group of them got together in Southern California, developed a tool. I think it's pretty much universally used now. Uh, there is a group of community service directors that are meeting to look at potential revisions and updates to that tool to make it even more ironclad in terms of protections for the individual who is being served in a residential facility. Also, there needs some protections for the provider too. I mean, it's a two-way street. If you're a landlord, there are certain rights as a landlord and rights as a tenant, and those need to be spelled out clearly in the agreement, and that's what the rules are saying. Um, I have a right to choose who my roommate is.
Um,
That would be number 2,
Uh huh.
and also that's still number 4.
How about number 7 too?
Yeah, definitely number 7.
Okay, um, and that also can include number 2 because you know the rules talk about uh, you you should be given an option as to whether you want a private room or to be in a roommate situation. So there are a few that potentially can get into that one. I have a right to decide what I do and when I do it.
Definitely number 5,
Uh huh.
but also number 8
Uh huh.
and number 1
Yeah.
and number 9, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, could also be privacy if you want to do it and you don't want other people involved with it. So but good. I think all good responses. And again, the reason I like this particular document is because it does get you to think and think in terms of how these 10 areas sort of overlap each other. So they're not like discrete rules, they do sort of combine. Um, I have a right to have the visitors I want to have in the home at any time,
Well, of course, number 9, and then of
right?
course 7 again.
Uh-huh,
Um,
right.
and I would also say choice of setting number 2.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
I did notice, I've noticed about there's a lot of the terminology is the same with a lot of the settings. So it does make it very like open for interpretation, but
yeah.
also seeing that they're pretty equal.
One of the things that I heard quite a bit when I was going out and doing some of the HCBS assessments of family homes and group homes was a concern um, about this in terms of you know overnight visitors and hey, I'm a licensed facility. Anybody who is coming in spending any time, do they need to be fingerprinted? Uh, the other issue being someone raised the fact that hey, wait a minute, one of the people who live in my home uses the public transportation system to get to and or get around town. This individual was pretty knowledgeable about using the bus system, And what would happen if they just met somebody at the bus stop or on the bus and said and brought them home and said, "Hey, this is my new best buddy, and I want them, I'm gonna take because I have privacy rights. I'll take them in my room, and you know, as a provider, you may have a red flag go off. Wait a minute, is this person uh, looking to exploit your client? And this is a challenge. I mean, there are things in these new rules that we're still learning, and we're still trying to come up with some best practice issues. What are some of your thoughts on this, Ruth?
Well, I think it is really tricky. You know, the bottom line is that, people have a right to make poor choices or
Right.
what we would deem as a poor choice. Um, I think the biggest challenge, though, is the protections for the other residents in the home. And
That's
I know
true.
that that's, and conversations swirl also about, well, wait a minute, our fire clearance is for this many people.
Right.
And so how do we account for this extra person? So, I mean, I don't have any grand answers on it, but those are the kind of the things you struggle with is how do you balance all of that out um, when we have licensing requirements that we have to meet? And I think that's the biggest challenge is sometimes it feels like some of the licensing requirements aren't meshing with the hard and
Uh-huh.
fast HCBS.
Yeah. Um, Controversially, when uh, Dr. Tom Pomerantz was doing some presentations at the Kern Regional Center this last year, he thought that over time licensing is going to go away because uh, as we see more and more focus on individual autonomy, the need for the regulations about health and safety will become less and less. I'm not as sure as he is on that one. I think that there are certain basic requirements that you would sort of need to continue, just like, for example, a restaurant has to follow certain health and safety requirements to make sure that they're protecting both their people who work there and the customers that they serve. And how do you go about doing some of that if you don't have an oversight agency? I think this will be a continual topic of discussion among, and there is a committee at the state level between developmental services, uh, aging, mental health, and licensing, because HCBS is not only for IDD, but it's for all Medicaid services. So Medicaid services in California, I think there's like seven Medicaid waiver, programs in California. So there's one for HIV. There's one for, like I say, for elderly. There's one for mental health. There's IDD. So any of those that include a residential component really are looking at this whole area of you know, respecting the individual's right to have visitors and people that they want to be with versus, as you said, protection for the other residents, the fire clearance, those issues. So stay tuned on this one. Um, Next one I'm going to go here is I have the right to lead my life and have help leading my life.
Well, that of course is number 5, and then also 3, 4,
Hmm.
2.
Right. I think also number one too. Access to the community, where I want to go, what I want to do, all of those. And again, this points out the how the overlap in all of these. I have the right to live, work, and spend time in spaces where there are people who are not disabled.
Well, number 1 for sure,
Uh-huh.
um, and number 2,
Mm-hmm.
and number 10.
Uh-huh. It could be number five too, if you where you get your services.
Yep.
Um, all right. Next one. I have a right to be treated as an adult with dignity and respect.
Number 4 for sure,
Uh-huh.
and number 5,
Number 3 as well.
and number 3. Yep. Number
Yeah.
2,
Uh-huh.
and number 1.
Yeah. Again, we're hitting them all.
Yeah.
um, uh, I have a right to privacy in the place that I sleep and live.
That's definitely 7, 9. It's also going to be 2, 4, 3, and I'd say 5 as well.
Hmm. Um, okay. I have the right to make decisions that feel right to me. These life choices could be about what I do, where I am, and who I spend time with.
Number 4
Uh-huh.
and 5
Uh-huh.
and 2.
Okay. Um, Next one is I have the right to choose which staff work with me.
That's number 2 for sure. Number 5 as well.
Uh-huh.
Number 3, as it is pertaining to how they want to be treated. And I would say also number 1.
Uh-huh. Okay. One of the things that we went out and when we were doing the evaluations, and again, something that initially had some controversy, I'm not hearing it as much at this point, is the whole issue of in residential facilities having locks on bedroom doors. I think people have sort of come to accept that, but there is the criteria saying that wait a minute, only certain staff, and those staff should be the ones that the individual who is in that room designate should have access to a key. So it shouldn't be like maybe just a key that's hanging in the kitchen, on a keychain that whoever's on staff can use. It should be a designated individual of the clients or the individual's choosing as to whom can come into the room. I, as an individual, my wife and I have a property, and uh, um, it's in an area that's got some fire clearance issues. And when we go up there to do some trimming and mowing and whatever, even though we're on the outside of the property, we contact the people who are renting from us first to say, hey, we're going to be on the property on this day. We're not coming in. We're just going to be on the outside. We still want to make sure that we notice you and what have you. And again, that's to be respectful and we believe consistent with renter tenant uh, law. And so the same sort of thing applies in this case with, going into someone's room and how you go about doing that. And I've encouraged folks to develop a protocol on that so that both the individuals who are residing in their home and also the staff know when they can go into the room, who can go into that room, etc. Um, I have the right to lock my door when I want to, and to have my personal items in my personal space that I can lock. And what I have found on this one is that some providers do put locks on doors, but don't necessarily have locks on uh, like a cabinet in the individual's room. So good idea to do both. And I'm yeah, and I yeah, I didn't ask you which number that is, but I assume that you pretty much know it's number 7 in that particular one primarily, but also number 2. It could be
Yeah.
number 3. And um, I have the
Well, it's
right
in
to
the
have.
admission agreement
Go
too.
ahead. What's that?
Potentially in the admission agreement too.
Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Ruth. Um, I have the right to have furniture and decorations that I want.
That's 3, right to be treated well. 4,
Uh-huh.
independence. 5, choice of services and supports. And um, accessibility as well, right?
Right, it could be, and then it also is number 7, privacy in the home. That in my space, I can decorate it as I want. You know, years ago, I had a young man who wanted to put up some fairly risque posters on the walls in his room, and the provider said, "No, I'm fairly religious and very modest, and this is not something that is acceptable in my home." And we had to sort of negotiate it and look at, is this the right placement for this individual? And so we went through a whole process to figure out if how do we go with that to respect this person's desires to decorate their own space versus the provider's concerns about her own values and whether they were in conflict. Um, I have a right to eat the food I want when I want to.
Number 8.
Uh-huh. Um, and again, this is initially, I heard a lot of uh, concern about this one. Uh, Not as much currently, but because I think people have sort of understood that in some cases, restriction is in the client's health and safety needs, and that utilizing the individual plan with a the individual's consent to modify that plan specific to uh, diet uh, is, in many cases, an appropriate response. I talked to one provider who shared with me, hey, we have a client who's got some fairly challenging blood sugar issues and was having A1C over 10, which is very high, and through a combination of medication, um, assisting him with getting out and moving and exercise, and a specific diet, we were able to get it down to the sixes. And then when this regulation came out, we had to sort of let him back into the kitchen and back up into the 10 it went. And what we talked about was that there is specifically in HCBS a section that talks about how you can put a restriction into the IBP. It has to be very clearly spelled out in a document. There has to be acknowledgement that you've tried less restrictive uh, ways of doing it before you've gone to this restriction, and that it's going to be reviewed fairly regularly, and you can continue to look at if you can sort of back off uh, that restriction. So clearly, if it's a health and safety issue, there's some other folks that maybe have, other dietary needs or food allergies or other things that need to be taken into consideration with this standard. And so that's something that you look at on an individual basis with that person, with the team, with the regional center. In many cases, it's important to get orders from their primary and specialized physicians on what they feel would be appropriate for that individual, and then have the team come up with an approach with the individual's consent.
Also, I feel like that
Um,
would be a great opportunity for some informed decision making because, you can't always keep the person from those things specifically because if you're going out to a movie or something, they still have those decisions to go out and purchase candy and sodas, at the concession stand. So,
okay.
as a alternative, would be great to show them some videos or take them to dietary classes and for them to learn that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and sometimes moderation. This I mentioned that I was at a conference this last week in Sacramento, and one night we went to the Cheesecake Factory for dinner. I ordered salmon, and I was being really good, but guess what they're known for? The cheesecake, right? So you got to kind of have to have a piece. So once in a while, even under the best of things, and even with restrictions in place, it there's necessary to have some flexibility, and that's individualized. You can work again with their physician and their regional center and the individual to make those kind of decisions. So one size does not fit all with this, and what someone can do with access to food is very person specific in terms of their planning. Um, I have a right to move my body comfortably in the place that I live.
Um, 2
Uh huh.
and 7.
Three, three and
Uh huh.
four.
Yeah, three. All right. Okay. All those could work. Yeah.
And 10.
And then yeah. Um, okay. And here's the last one. I have the right to access every part of my home that is not a private space of another person.
That would be 6, 4,
Two.
Two
Uh-huh.
and
Guys,
10.
you're great. You did a wonderful job. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to scan this document, and then there's another document as well that AO gave us out in their presentation that they did, and the other one is X. This is the other document. It's called. Oops, I don't know if you. But it's called Advocate for Your Home and Community-Based Service Rights. And then it again, it's from the individual's perspective, just like those questions were saying, I have the right. These say, what can you say if you want more or different community? And it talks about statements that a individual can make to help them ask for what they want. So these might be helpful in working with your the individuals you serve. It's like one, two, three,
Ruth, do you
four,
have
5
access
pages.
to the chat right now? Would you
What's
mind
that?
putting your, or for Ruth, if she wouldn't mind
Yeah.
putting her email, I can just shoot that over to her as soon as Jeff gets them to me.
Oh,
Will
okay.
you?
Then let me jump in there.
And then we'll have that available. We may end up putting it on our website. I'm not sure. Yeah, it is proprietary, but like I say, they did give it out, so I'm not sure I want to put it on the website, but I think I can share it. All right. So if anybody has anything else um, today, any other questions or concerns?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Then, well, thank you. And then next week, we're going to have a sort of in-depth look at just, again, the whole mechanics of HCBS and how we got to where we are today and some of the history behind it and some other things. So that's going to be my presentation for the webinar for next Wednesday. With
And
that,
also,
what's that?
sorry, I just want to plug in one more thing. The Relias training.
Okay.
Not sure if you had got a hold of myself or Irene. If you're interested, Ruth, you can send maybe response in the email if interested. There's limited availability in the slots for the training, so we want to get everybody on that and making sure like everything's pertaining to HCBS. So, and if
Um,
interested.
yeah.
Okay, great.
A little bit more about that, Ruth. Because we've got such low numbers of people coming on, we thought, okay, let's try something different with some of the funds that we have for HCBS. I mean, we're using, state dollars, DDS funds, KRC funds, and we want to make sure we're using them cost effectively. And this is not the greatest way to do it when you're not doing when the outreach is limited. So one of the things that we heard was, wait a minute, 10 to 11, 10 to 11:30 on Wednesdays is not the best time for us. We would like to have some flexibility with that. So we went to Relayus, which is probably the largest continuing education provider in the country. They do continuing education for a number of different uh, topics, organizations. They do mental health training, developmental disabilities training, safety training, all kinds of different trainings for many, many different types of areas. And we contracted with them for a number of slots specific to their training for persons with IDD. And what that is where you would get a password. You could go in, take a look at the menu of classes that are available. We've sort of limited those to ones that have to do with HCBS. So there's some classes like on how to do personal care needs, and no, we're not including those. And the advantage of this is put in your password, put in get online, click on the class that you're taking. If like all of a sudden something your you're at home and your children say, "Hey, we want dinner now," and you have to sort of stop and go to do something else, or you get a phone call and you can come back to it and do it on your
Oh,
own
okay.
time. If you have insomnia at 2 in the morning and you can't sleep and you might as well do something rather than lay in bed here. This would be an option. Once you complete a course, you take a an exam. If you pass the exam, it then gives you credit for the class. We can then track that. Valerie can then see who's taken courses and what they've completed, in which case we can then issue a CEU for the amount of time for that class. So it's just another option for
Okay.
doing some continuing education. And there's, like I said, a number of topics that are available under that. So
Oh,
if you're
wow.
interested,
Okay.
let Valerie know and or Irene, and they can get you on the list. They've just finalized it now, and they're about ready to send out to the first group of people who have expressed some interest, the passwords and things to get started. So we're hopeful to get it fully up and running right around the first of next month, which is next week, right?
Yeah, the trajectory is about the first. I think we could probably have it up a little bit sooner. But
Okay.
yeah, it's about a good 20 hours worth of trainings, but they're all self-paced. You take them at your own leisure time, and there's actually a an app for it as well. So for
Uh-huh.
those
And,
who
and
are on the
and
go, and say
good professional information. It's
yes.
set up.
Hmm.
It's a level that for DSPs. It can be used for other folks. If you have staff and you want to have a group of staff sit and watch it, you can do that. Then have each one of them potentially take the exam, or I mean, I'm not sure how that would work. I think you have to. Each person has to sign up because it only gives credit for the one. But there are some.
But if you
So
feel it's a beneficial course or a training that you would like to go over with everyone and not required that they get their certificate of completion as well as, CEUs, it's completely up to you. But it's, like I said, there's a lot of convenience to it.
Yeah, if you could send me the information, that'd be great, because then I can share it also with Astra,
uh
who handles all of our training. So,
all right. Okay. Thank you. Well. Okay. Well, hopefully see you again, and have a great day, and we'll move onward and upward. All right.
All
Good
right,
night.
thanks for
sounds
joining.
Goodbye
good.
now.
Thank you.